Today we're unraveling one of the most wild political mysteries of our time. We're looking at a man who basically emerged out of nowhere to completely dominate not just Russian politics, but global geopolitics. And along the way, he built this highly secretive personal empire. So how exactly did a virtual unknown manage to construct a system of such absolute control, complete with staggering hidden wealth?
Well, picture this for a second. It's September 3rd, 2025, over at a World War II anniversary event in Beijing. A hot mic actually catches Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping just casually strolling and making small talk. But they're not talking about the weather, no. They're discussing how swift advancements in biotechnology and organ transplants could potentially let people live to be 150 years old. It perfectly sets up our whole theme today, because we're looking at an aging leader who is profoundly focused on power, legacy, and, maybe even a kind of immortality.
And it really forces us to ask this fundamental question: where did this guy come from? Because think about it. Just over a quarter of a century ago, almost nobody knew who Vladimir Putin was. When Russia's first post-Soviet leader, Boris Yeltsin, suddenly named him as his interim successor on New Year's Eve back in 1999, the world was completely blindsided. He wasn't some prominent politician. Literally a decade prior, he was just a middling KGB agent.
Which brings us to Section 1, Shadows of the Ancestors.
To really understand the man today, we first have to peel back the layers of his heavily contested family history, because the origins of the Putin family are remarkably shadowy. On one hand, we've got Vladimir Putin's own version of events, which he popularized in a 2018 documentary. He claims his grandfather, Spiridon Putin, was this trusted personal chef for Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin, and even a member of the feared NKVD secret police. But then you look at the historical record. Historians who have actually dug into the Russian archives find practically zero evidence to support this grand narrative. Given how extremely poor the family was at the time, it's highly, highly improbable that Spiridon maintained those kinds of trusted ties with the Soviet elite.
Because the reality of his family's background, it was a story of just unimaginable trauma. During the horrific siege of Leningrad in World War II, his father, who was a submariner, barely survived a suicide mission behind enemy lines and suffered severe frostbite. His mother actually lost her own mother to an artillery shell. They lost 2 sons before Vladimir was even born, one in infancy and young Victor to diphtheria during the war. When Vladimir finally came along in 1952, the family lived for 20 years in this cramped, rat-infested communal apartment on Baskov Lane. No hot water, no washing facilities, and this environment of brutal survival, it fundamentally shaped how he views the world.
All right, let's move on to Section 2, KGB spy to president.
So from those harsh courtyards of Leningrad, this tough street kid looked to the Secret Service as his ticket out, and it sparked this rapid, opportunistic ascent. He joins the KGB, spends the 1980s basically riding a desk in Dresden, East Germany, where he watches the Berlin Wall fall and the Soviet Empire completely collapse firsthand. He heads back to a chaotic Russia in 1990 and aligns himself with his old university professor, Anatoly Sobchak, who'd become the mayor of St. Petersburg. And here's where he really makes himself indispensable during that deeply corrupt privatization era of the 1990s. He parlays all of that into a transfer to Moscow, eventually gets appointed head of the FSB, which is the KGB's successor, in 1998, and then Yeltsin elevates him to the ultimate seat of power in 1999.
Next up, Section 3. Rebuilding the Russian Empire.
Okay, so once he's in power, this guy who initially seemed like a pragmatist steadily begins centralizing absolute control. And it's fascinating how he navigated the young post-Soviet democratic system to establish that authority, all while keeping up the mere appearance of constitutional law. The Russian constitution said 2 consecutive terms max. So in 2008, he just steps aside, installs his loyal ally Dmitry Medvedev as a placeholder president, and then boom, returns for a 3rd term. By 2020, he implemented a constitutional reset that essentially abolished his term limits entirely.
With his power completely secure at home, he turned to his true ideological drive, reclaiming the lost lands of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. He doesn't just idolize Soviet leaders, right? He literally idolizes the imperial expansion of Peter the Great. And we're seeing this playbook unfold step by step. 2008, he carves out breakaway states in Georgia. 2014, he annexes the Crimean Peninsula. Of course, this all culminates in the massive 2022 invasion of Ukraine, and even now by 2025, amidst peace negotiations, his singular uncompromising demand is a binding guarantee to block Ukraine from NATO.
But man, this imperial ambition has come at a staggering cost: 1 million. That is the estimated number of Russian casualties, killed and wounded, in Ukraine based on the source material. Just an immense human toll. And it severely strained the Russian state, driving Putin to lean heavily on North Korean troops, Iranian military support, and Indian oil money just to keep the war effort afloat.
And that strain really started to show. In June 2023, Putin faced the absolute greatest threat to his rule, the Wagner Group mutiny. Yevgeny Prigozhin, this former chef turned mercenary leader who came up alongside Putin, literally marched his heavily armed troops toward Moscow. In a totally bizarre turn of events, Prigozhin just aborted the march. 2 months later, he dies in an airplane crash that experts widely believe was orchestrated by the regime. The message there was crystal clear. Challenges to absolute authority are fatal.
That brings us to our final part, Section 4, Hidden Wealth and Secret Family. So, this is the core paradox of his entire rule. It's a massive chasm between his carefully stage-managed public persona and his highly secretive private reality. Publicly, he's the curated man of the people, a judoka, a rugged outdoorsman. He supposedly shuns modern tech, preferring pen and paper and old-school landlines. And on paper, his official salary is around $150,000. But the private reality? A massive Black Sea palace, elite global assets, hidden billions tucked away in proxy accounts in Swiss banks.
And honestly, absolutely nothing symbolizes this undisclosed financial empire better than this number right here, $500 million. That's the estimated value of his secret super yacht. But get this, it's actually just the crown jewel of a much larger, highly classified yacht empire. I really want to emphasize this point because it is the ultimate symbol of the paradox we're talking about. While he's projecting the image of this humble public servant on a modest salary, international experts theorize that through these vast, untraceable networks of state assets and oligarch proxies, he might actually be the wealthiest man in the entire world. A $500 million super yacht isn't just a boat, it's literally a floating fortress belonging to a wider, secret naval fleet. It underscores exactly how much of Russia's resources have been quietly siphoned into this highly secretive, personal empire.
Which definitely begs the question, who inherits all this? Let's take a quick look at the family tree. He divorced his wife, Ludmila, back in 2014. His two sanctioned daughters, Maria and Katerina, they hold high-level, extremely well-funded academic posts in Moscow. Ironically enough, Maria is heavily involved in that exact same anti-aging research we mentioned at the very start of the explainer. He's also got cousins and nephews like Igor and Roman who have become incredibly wealthy businessmen. But pay close attention to his rumored partner, former gymnast Alina Kabayeva. It's widely believed she is the mother to two of his young sons, Ivan and Vladimir. If that's true, these kids could emerge as formidable political figures in the 2030s.
He's in his early 70s today, and seemingly in a very secure position to rule until at least his 80s, right around 2032. But this entire structure, all of it, relies on just one man. So, what you should really take away from this is a critical question for the future. Will this highly secretive family, one that literally came out of nowhere from the rat-infested courtyards of Leningrad, continue to cast a shadow over global geopolitics, complete with $500 million yachts and a private empire, long after he's gone? Or does the whole system just collapse the moment the absolute ruler is removed? Something to think about.